Hello, students. This is Ms. Rosato from the library, and this week we have something special because we're celebrating an author, a person who writes books, and his name is Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl has written many different books and stories, and I know that many of you may have watched movies that were based on his stories, like maybe Matilda or the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant, or James and the Giant Peach. All of these are books that he has written. Today, we're going to read a story by Roald Dahl to celebrate him. And the story is called Esio Trot. Now, as you can tell, I have something on my cheeks. What do I have on my cheeks? They look like little turtles, just like the turtle that is on the cover of the book. But this is a special turtle. This is a turtle that lives on land. So it's a tortoise. And we're going to be talking a lot about tortoises. But let's see what the book is about. Esio Trot. It is actually a love story, but it's very funny. Here we begin. Mr. Hoppy lived in a small apartment in a tall building. He lived alone. There were two loves in Mr. Hoppy's life. He loved his flowers, and I can see he has a lot of flowers in his balcony. And he also loved, it's a secret. He also loved Mrs. Silver. Mrs. Silver was a lovely woman that also lived alone in an apartment right below Mr. Hoppy's apartment. Every morning, Mr. Hoppy and Mrs. Silver would talk to each other. But Mr. Hoppy was so shy, he never managed to tell her that he loved her. Well, let's see what happens. Now, Mrs. Silver also loved someone. She gave all her love to a small tortoise called Alfie. Can you see him over here, that little small tortoise? When Mr. Hoppy saw Mrs. Silver kissing and talking to Alfie, he would only say, "I wish Mrs. Silver would love me as much as she loves Alfie." One beautiful morning, Mrs. Silver was serving Alfie his breakfast. "Isn't he beautiful?" said Mrs. Silver. "Absolutely beautiful," said Mr. Hoppy, but he was not thinking that Alfie was beautiful. He was thinking Mrs. Silver was beautiful. "Oh, I do wish he would grow faster," Mrs. Silver was saying. Mrs. Silver said, "I want him to be a big tortoise. I want it so much that I would give anything to make him grow." When she said these words, Mr. Hoppy got a big idea. "Mrs. Silver, I know how to make tortoises grow bigger," said Mr. Hoppy. "Oh, please tell me, please. I will forever be your best friend," said Mrs. Silver. "Wait, I'll have to go in and write down something for you," said Mr. Hoppy. A few minutes later, a piece of paper was given to Mrs. Silver. She opened the paper, and this is what she read. "Esio Trot, Esio Trot, tag regim regim. Emok no, Esio Trot, Werg poo, Fop poo, Toos poo. I cannot understand it. Is this another language? Asked Mrs. Silver. Mr. Hoppy replied, Yes, it is tortoise language. It is the same as ours, but just spelled backwards. If you turn them to human language, the words on the message says, Tortoise, tortoise, get bigger, bigger. Come on, tortoise, grow up, puff up, shoot up. And if I look at the words, he's right. I can see tortoise, but if I write tortoise backwards, what I see is the word Esio Trot. Can you see that? Okay, let's continue with the story. So now, every day, oh, this is still Mr. Hoppy talking. So now, every day, say these words to Alfie, and he will grow up to be a big tortoise. Soon, Mr. Hoppy started to work. How are these words going to make Alfie grow? Do you think they're really magic words? Let's see what happens. Mr. Hoppy went to the pet store and bought many tortoises that were different sizes. All of them were bigger than Alfie. Yes, I can see it's a pet store. I see different pets. And yes, look, I see that Mr. Hoppy has different tortoises in cages. What is he going to do? Then Mr. Hoppy went home and was ready to begin. He measured and weighed each tortoise. When Mrs. Silver left her apartment to go to the market, Mr. Hoppy carried Alfie to his apartment using his tortoise catcher. And then he picked a tortoise that was a little bigger than Alfie and lowered this tortoise to Mrs. Silver's apartment. Do you see what he's doing? He took Alfie and he switched him with a tortoise that was a little bigger. Wow. Every day, Mr. Hoppy replaced Mrs. Silver's tortoise with a tortoise that was a little bit bigger. And every day she would say the magic words. Can you say these words along with me? They're pretty hard to read, but let's try it. Esio Trot, Esio Trot, Tag Rigib Rigib, Emok no, Esio Trot, Werg poo, Fop poo, Toos poo. So, let's see what happened to the tortoise. In the beginning, this is Alfie. He weighs only 13 ounces. Then, at the end of the first week, we have tortoise number 2. He now weighs 15 ounces. Then at the end of the second week, we have tortoise number 3, and he weighs 17 ounces. At the end of the third week, we have tortoise number 4, who weighs 19 ounces. At the end of the fourth week, we have tortoise number 5 that weighs 21 ounces. At the end of the fifth week, we've got tortoise number 6 that weighs 23 ounces. And at the end of the 6th week, we have tortoise number 7 that weighs 25 ounces. Extraordinary! Wow! Do you see how little Alfie becomes a big tortoise? When Mrs. Silver saw that her precious Alfie was growing week after week, she was very, very happy. "Oh, Mr. Poppy, your magic words worked. It is a miracle. Please come to my apartment to see," said Mrs. Silver. When Mr. Hoppy knocked on the door, Mrs. Silver welcomed him with a huge smile on her face. "You are the most wonderful man in the world," said Mrs. Silver. Mr. Hoppy immediately said, "Mrs. Silver, will you please marry me?" She said yes, and they lived happily ever after. And so did Alfie and all the rest of the tortoises. It's funny that Roald Dahl, when he finished the story, he told everyone that, it was a kind of true story, and that little Alfie was later taken to a wonderful home where he grew up with a small girl called Roberta Squibb. And Roald Dahl used this long pole that he called the tortoise catcher in his book. But it seems that he really did invent this tortoise catcher, but he used it to pick up paper from the floor. So, did you enjoy the story? I thought it was very romantic. Okay, dress up as Roald Dahl and see you later, alligators. Or should I say, see you later, tortoises? Bye!